So let's begin today with a series of questions. How often do married couples have sex? What's normal? Can you have too much sex? If you seldom have sex, does this affect your marriage in a negative way? How does the quality versus the quantity thing work in regards to sex? How often do the two of you have sex? You know, sex has been a part of marriage since Adam looked at a naked and unashamed Eve and said, wow. Well, that's not exactly the way the Bible says it, but I can't imagine him saying anything else. How often did Adam and Eve have sex? I have no idea. But from creation to Genesis 3, when they disobeyed God and then put clothes on, there was a lot of nakedness before this. Let's get back to the questions. How often do married couples have sex? Well, there's been a number of studies on this, and the consensus seems to land at a little over one time a week. For some couples, it's more often this, and others it's less. How often you have sex as a couple is probably not something that you want to compare to other couples. Because defining what is normal can be very difficult because there's so much to be considered. Marriages are different, lives are different, and schedules are different. Those are just a few of the things. What do you consider normal for you as a couple? If you have sex once a week, or twice a month, or once a month, does that work for you as a couple? If any of one of those is your normal, does it work for both of you? Most couples that fight over sex seem to fight over frequency, and most of those couples don't talk about it until one of them wants to have sex, which is usually not the optimum time to bring it up. I don't think I've ever talked about sex with a couple who both had the exact same sex drive. One usually wants to have sex more often than the other. That's normal. But frequency is not the issue. Most couples miss the point. The issue is how you handle the frequency issue as a couple. Do you talk about it? Do you empathize with each other? Do you compromise? So when we constantly fight over frequency, our focus shifts and we're no longer embracing the gift of sex in marriage as God intended it. It's important to define together what is your normal at this stage of your marriage. It's not meant to be a rigid rule, but it will get you discussing sex, and that's really good. Let's say you decide that twice a week works for both of you, and this is where you decided you are in life and where you're going to start. Some couples feel they need to schedule it. Most people, or a lot of people, cringe at that thought because sex is supposed to be spontaneous. Well, I agree that spontaneous sex is great, but nowhere is it written that sex must be that way. Scheduling helps when schedules are busy or you have kids in the house. You know, one couple I know found that scheduling sex on Sunday afternoon during the kids' nap worked well for them. It could be a weeknight when the kids go to bed early so you can have alone time together. My point is not to be afraid of scheduling it if it helps with your consistent frequency. One wife shared with me that scheduling was actually helping her to get her mind focused on having sex with her husband. This was a big plus for her. Even if we don't put it on the calendar, which could be fun and get some interesting messaging going on during the day, most of us know when there are consistent windows of opportunity for sex in our marriage on any given week. Your normal may not be twice a week. It may be more, less, or far less. The key here is, does it work for both of you? If it does, I'd say that's your normal, and that is completely okay. There's one more point I want to make. Let's talk for a minute about this whole quality versus quantity thing. We have defined the quantity by deciding on your normal. Now the quality. How do you define quality sex? Be careful here that you don't create a box that you can't get out of. For us, quality means that we both enjoy the experience. Does it mean that we both have an orgasm every time? No. And if you define successful sex totally on having an orgasm, I think we run the risk of missing out on some great experiences. Usually if one does not have an orgasm, in most couples it's the wife. And here's what women tell me. Even if they don't have an orgasm, they enjoy the experience. It feels good. They love the closeness. They love the attention and intimacy. And as guys, we can feel that we failed if our wife doesn't climax. I'm telling you that that is not the gauge. So don't miss the experience because you have bought into that idea. Quality does not mean that every time you have sex there has to be candlelight, special music, hours of foreplay. A quickie in the morning can be just as quality as a 2-hour session in the evening. They're just different. Remember, our standard is that both enjoy the experience. For the men, That usually just happens. For men, there is no bad sex. But for wives, we need to give them a little time to focus and to warm up to the idea. Where a man's mind can go to sex in a split second or less, a woman usually will need a little time to get going. I know that when I give Nancy that time, the experience will be better for both of us. So what about you? What's your next step in improving your sex life in your marriage?